Hi there, it's Rob from Octopus. Welcome to the Octopus 2021 Q3 release. This is our third release of 2021, and I'm happy to share it with you. In this release, we introduce native Google Cloud Platform support with centralized Kubernetes deployments and runbooks. We now support the three largest cloud providers, including AWS, Microsoft Azure, and now Google Cloud. And we're proud to offer a world-class Kubernetes experience for developers. This release also includes Workato integration for automated no or low-code workflows, as well as a new LDAP auth provider and updated variable substitution filters. In this video, we'll take a look at how runbooks, Google Cloud, and Octopus Deploy offer the ultimate Kubernetes experience for engineers. Let's get started. This is my personal Octopus instance, and it's running in Octopus Cloud, but could just as easily be running on-prem in either a Windows server or in a Linux container. Today we're going to look at how we can deploy and operate a Spring Boot application called Petclinic in Kubernetes. If you've never heard of Petclinic, it's a popular sample application using Spring Boot. And so if you go to GitHub, there's a repo that has all the source, etc. And I'll include a link to the repo in the description below. So we're going to be deploying a containerized web application to a Kubernetes cluster running in Google Cloud. So the first thing we should do is take a look at our infrastructure. This is my infrastructure dashboard, and there's two things we want to take a look at here. First, we're going to take a look at our accounts and how we configure Google Cloud. And second, we're going to look at our environments and the deployment targets configured within them. So let's take a look at our accounts. Now here you can see I've accounts for the three major cloud providers. Octopus has built-in support for all three: Azure, AWS, and now with this release, Google Cloud. Accounts allow you to store and manage all your authentication details for all your subscriptions, accounts, etc. And it's not just the major cloud providers. You can also add SSH key pairs, generic usernames and passwords, as well as tokens. In this case, we're deploying to Google Cloud, so let's take a look at my sandbox account. Now here, I'm just going to expand the key file area. I've already uploaded my JSON key file, and that's it. Google makes it really easy to integrate with and deploy your applications and services to the Google Cloud platform. I'm using the same account for both test and production environments, but most teams split this up. They have additional accounts for production, or they split it up by team and subscriptions, etc. In this case, I've kept it simple for demo purposes. Now let's take a look at our environments and the infrastructure we're deploying to. You can see I have two environments, test and production. So let's take a look at one of my clusters. I'd like to highlight how I authenticate with my Kubernetes cluster. You can see I've selected the Google Cloud account authentication type, and then all I need to do is select my sandbox account and provide my cluster name and Google Cloud project, and that's pretty much it. Octopus's built-in Google Cloud support simplifies authentication, but also configuring your Kubernetes clusters. Everything is centralized and secure. Now we'll head back to our dashboard. Building on our infrastructure support, one of the things I like about Octopus is that it models my environments. If I'm deploying to production, I know it's already progressed through all my test infrastructure. And again, in this case, I just have a test and prod environment, but if you imagine dev test prod or dev test staging production, etc., this gives me confidence that my next deployment is going to work. Now, let's take a look at our projects. I have two projects here, MySQL and Petclinic. The MySQL project is quite simple. It just provisions MySQL database in a container running in my Kubernetes cluster. Petclinic is our containerized web application, and there's two things we'd like to look at. First, the deployment process, but then second, I have a collection of runbooks to help me maintain the application and keep it running smoothly. If we take a look at my deployment process, you can see it's quite simple. I have a single deploy Kubernetes container step. Before we take a look at it, I'd like to highlight the other options for Kubernetes deployments. So if I select Kubernetes here and scroll down, you can see I have a number of options. The first is our Deploy Kubernetes Container step. This is a structured UI-driven step that helps guide you through the process of configuring your deployment. The benefit is that it's easier to get started and there is no YAML. The second is our Deploy Raw Kubernetes YAML step. This step gives you full control over your deployment YAML and includes support to update configuration settings with variables. The third option is to use Helm, which is the de facto package manager for Kubernetes. This allows you to use Helm and take advantage of all of its benefits. If I head back to my deployment process, let's take a look at our deployment configuration. So this is our structured step where you don't have to write any YAML. And I won't go through it all because it is quite lengthy, but basically the key idea is that it presents forms to allow you to configure your deployment and services, etc. without writing any YAML. I'll take a look at my container configuration to illustrate this. You can see all the details of my container configuration here, and especially environment variables. And this is where I'm mapping it back to Octopus project variables. And so things like username and password are scoped to my test and production environments so that I've got unique values for each one of those. The other thing that I'd like to point out is that since we launched this feature set originally, we've added the ability to edit the underlying resource YAML. The goal of this feature is not to allow you to edit the YAML, it's to allow you to copy and paste the YAML into a Deploy Raw Kubernetes YAML step if you need full control. And so this is just a quick start to allow you to do that. The other thing it allows you to do is see your underlying resource YAML easily. So with that said, let's head back to our project overview and deploy our latest release to production. So that was successful. Now, if I jump over to the Google Cloud console, I can take a look at how my application's running, and I can see things are ticking along fine. If I actually jump to the application, I can see it's running just fine. Now I'd like to talk about the operations side of the world. So once we've deployed our applications, we need to keep them running smoothly. And so in a perfect world, things will just run, everything scales automatically, and everything is fine. In reality, there's production issues, outages, etc. So what I wanted to highlight was a couple scenarios that could be useful for development teams who are working with Octopus, Kubernetes, and Google Cloud. So imagine you have a report of a production issue. There's performance problems, or your customers are reporting some type of problem. This is where Octopus and your centralized infrastructure come in really handy. So if I jump into a runbook, what I can do is I can write a kubectl script to query pod status, get detailed information, high level, etc. quickly and easily, and I don't have to jump through hoops. So if I jump into this step, this is a very simple step. It just allows me to run a kubectl script. The benefit is when I execute it, it will be pre-authenticated with my deployment target. So my production Kubernetes cluster uses my Google Cloud account, so I can execute this script quickly and easily without needing to get the tools in place, make sure I have the right dependencies, or even find out the username and password to be able to execute these things. This script is just gathering high-level details of all the services and pods running on my cluster. So if I go ahead and run this against production, so I've been able to gather some useful information in a self-service manner. If I craft a handful of useful runbooks to diagnose problems or even fix them, these can be shared with my team or even support or help desk staff to be able to run this when incidents occur. So the big advantage here is that I can have my deployment and runbook automation side by side. They can share configuration settings, scripts, certificates, and they all interact with the same infrastructure. The end result of this is that you can deploy your applications to Kubernetes using Google Cloud and keep them running with runbook automation in a centralized, secure, and straightforward manner.
Thanks for watching. Links for all the resources used in this video are in the description below. Octopus Cloud and Server are free for small teams, so head over to octopus.com/free to get started. Happy deployments!